This presentation is on mental health abuse investigations and mandatory reporting for adults 18 and over who are diagnosed with serious and persistent mental illnesses or are residents of a mental health facility as identified in Oregon's Permanent Administrative Order. Lane County's Mental Health Protective Service team is comprised of one screener and one investigator. A screener will take the report of concern from whoever is reporting it. The screener will then gather the relevant information, review eligibility criteria, and make a determination based on the details. Regardless of whether a report is open for investigation, the screener may request a PSA be completed by the victim's CMHP provider. PSA is further explained in notes on slide 11. The investigator's role is to conduct interviews and gather relevant documentation for investigations, then make a determination of the evidence as to whether a complaint is substantiated or not substantiated. The investigator also completes the death reviews. Please note that if you are uncertain of whether a report needs to be made, Protective Services is happy to consult about different situations as well as different possible community resources for clients in such situations. These are some acronyms you might encounter when working with PSI. AV stands for alleged victim and refers to the victim of the abuse. AP stands for accused person/provider and refers to the person allegedly abusing AV. CAM stands for Central Abuse Management, which is the online system where reports are documented and tracked. OTIS is the Office of Training, Investigation, and Safety, which is the state entity who oversees our investigations. OTIS is a designee of the Oregon Department of Human Services and the Oregon Health Authority. CMHP refers to any community mental health program, which is any mental health clinic accepting OHP or Medicaid and Medicare insurances. Protective Service assessments and death reviews will be explained in another slide, but they may be referred to as the PSA or DRs. Mental health workers are considered mandatory reporters of concerns related to abuse or neglect of clients. A mandatory reporter is defined as an individual who holds a professional position, such as social worker, physician, teacher, or counselor, that requires them to report to the appropriate state agency cases of abuse that they have reasonable cause to suspect. There are several entities who screen and investigate concerns of abuse or neglect. Adult Protective Services through Senior and Disability Services is for abuse or neglect against adults with a physical disability and or are over the age of 65. Developmental Disability Services has a protective service investigation team for adults over the age of 18 with a developmental disability diagnosis. Child Protective Services through DHS is for abuse or neglect of a child under the age of 18. If you are uncertain of which entity to make a report to, please choose which one seems most relevant. If it does not fall under that organization's jurisdiction, the person receiving the report will likely let you know and assist you in getting the report to the correct place. There are a few different ways to make reports to the Lane County Protective Service Investigations team. You can choose one of these options. The first and most preferred is to send a secure email to both PSI staff members with a screening form attached. Screening forms will be provided to your organization's leadership team. PSI can also receive reports to our reporting line, our direct phone numbers, or via our secure fax. When something is reported, the PSI screener will need to determine if the report meets all eligibility criteria to open an investigation. In order for an investigation to be opened, the report must meet the following criteria. AV must be a resident of a mental health facility, or they must have an SPMI diagnosis and be receiving mental health services from a community program. The AP must be a caregiver or a mental health service provider to AV. A caregiver, as defined in ORS 430.735, means an individual, whether paid or unpaid, or a facility that has assumed responsibility for all or a portion of the care of an adult as a result of a contract or agreement. Complaint must meet definition of abuse as identified in Slide 8. If all these criteria are met, an investigation will be opened. If not, then protective services and resources will be assessed and the screening will be closed. These are the 9 types of abuse: abandonment, physical abuse, involuntary seclusion, wrongful restraint, neglect, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, financial exploitation, and death. The definitions of each type of abuse under the Oregon Administrative Rule can be found in a document provided to your organization. The abuse reported must meet the definition of one of these types of abuse in order to be open for investigation. Another criteria to open an investigation is that the AV must be diagnosed with a serious and persistent mental illness. The process of a screening begins with the report made to the PSI team, usually the screener. The screener reviews the information of the report to determine if it meets criteria for an investigation to be opened. In cases where not all information is readily available, screener and the investigator may complete brief interviews to gather all information necessary to make a screening decision. If the report meets the criteria, an investigation will be opened and conducted. If the report does not meet criteria, the information will be documented and the screening will be closed. As noted previously, regardless of whether or not a report qualifies for investigation, a protective services assessment will be requested. If the AV has indicated enrollment in services with a community mental health provider, we will reach out to that organization to ask for a PS assessment from the assigned clinician or case manager. We ask that the CMHP reach out to the client within 24 hours to offer support and resources related to the issue at hand. The client may choose to decline or accept those services, which should then be documented on the PS assessment form and returned to us. The PSA is a protective service assessment which documents ideas, plans, and services offered to the victim in relation to the alleged abuse claim. PSAs are helpful with developing plans to ensure immediate safety and to reduce future risk. The client may choose to decline or accept these services and supports, which should then be documented on the PS assessment form and returned to the PSI team via email or fax. The final part of this presentation is on death reviews. Please notify PSI of the death of a client within 24 hours of finding out. We will ask for a death reporting form to be completed within 1 week of notifying us of the client passing. The death reporting form will assist PSI in gathering necessary information for the death review. Once records have been obtained, the lead investigator will review the records and ensure that no abuse or neglect was a factor in the client's death. If abuse or neglect appear to be a factor in the client's passing, the death review will be closed and an investigation will be opened immediately.